Hi everyone, so today we will discuss to you chapters 3 and 4, and we already uploaded a PowerPoint file sa atong GC and that will serve as your guide. So our first stop is chapter 3, which is all about the relationship of ethics with other sciences and other phases of human life. So let's start. I am Princess K.I. ALOLOR and I was assigned to discuss about the relationship of ethics with other sciences. So since science has many branches, in this topic there are only 4 other sciences that are closely linked to ethics, and these are logic, psychology, sociology, and economics. Before I discuss the relationship of ethics with other sciences, let us first define what ethics means and why is it related to other sciences. Ethics is a branch of philosophy that studies the nature and morality of human conduct from the standpoint of morality. So basically, ethics is concerned of what is morally good or bad or right and wrong conduct. And it is more about how man acts or behaves in accordance with morality. From that definition, we can say that the formal object of ethics is morality because it is our guiding principle, while our material object is human conduct because it is through our actions or how we behave towards others that we can determine whether we are doing good or bad towards them. So why is ethics related to other sciences? It is because it deals with the investigation of the nature of a man as a rational being and a being in relation with other beings. So as a man, we are both rational and social beings. We are capable, or it is in our very nature that we can determine what is right from wrong, and we also build relationships with other people. That is why it is evident that ethics is related to other sciences that also deals with the study of human nature. And these other sciences that I am talking about is logic, psychology, sociology, and economics. So to further elaborate, let us start with logic. So why is ethics related to other sciences? Let us first differentiate the two. Ethics is the study of correct action in accordance with morality, while logic is the science of correct thinking. So makaingon ta ang aim sa ethics is right acting, while ang aim sa logic is right thinking. Mo nang doing follows thinking, because we always tend to think critically first before doing something. Mo evaluate sa ta or mo observe sa ta what is happening sa atong environment para makahibaw ta unsay dapat buhaton sa nga ng sitwasyon. Mo nang doing follows thinking. Next, ethics focuses on the demands of the subjective human world or world of people and relationships. Maybe because we tend to act accordingly depending sa unsay gidemand sa atong world, but sometimes it is not good, but we consider it as good for that particular situation. Mo natong gitawag na moral dilemma. While logic focuses on the demands of material, non-human world or world of things in one's environment. Logic wants us to use critical thinking. We use critical thinking in order to come up with the right action or with the right decision for that particular situation. In terms of communication, ethics focuses and studies people's feelings and emotional states and how things are said, because ethics teaches us to do things that is right for that particular situation. Mo nang ethics is also focused on enhancing relationships because it teaches us to perform the right conduct to other people. Logic, on the other hand, focuses and studies what is done and said or the content of one's speech, and is focused on not misleading a person and giving him correct information. As what I said, logic wants us to use critical thinking to come up with the right decision para makaperform tag correct action towards other people. So ethics is related to logic because logic teaches us to think right, and when we think right, we will do the right thing. And doing the right thing in accordance with morality is what we call as ethics. So morality is still the guiding principle. Next is ethics and psychology. Why are they related? The difference between the two is that Ethics is the study of human behavior from the perspective of morality. We consider siya unsay good or bad. While on psychology, it is the scientific study of mental and behavioral characteristics. Mostly mo investigate siya sa reason behind sa behavior sa usa ka tawo. And psychology does not consider morality sa human behavior. So na-investigate raman siya. Pero they are related because both study man and his behavior. Mo ng ethics is related to psychology. Next is ethics and sociology. The difference between the two is that ethics is the study of moral order in the society, while sociology is the study of social order in the society. Ethics, society depends on ethics for its underlying principles, which is morality. And sociology deals with human relations in a society, or how people or how individuals interact within that community. So since society depends upon ethics, thus there is no social order if there is no moral order, because human relations in our society depends on proper order. And proper order comes only with the proper observance of moral laws and principles. And these moral laws and principles will help us achieve to have a better interacting society. So with that, we can say that ethics and sociology is related because ethics, which studies moral order, eventually includes social order in our society. The fourth and the last science related to ethics is economics. So economics is somehow related to ethics. Economics deals with labor, wages, production, as well as distribution of wealth. While ethics, in terms of business processes, it is based on justice, charity, and other moral principles nga makakreate og harmony sa atong community. So, since man is considered as an economic being because we are earning for a living, so he can either be a seller or a customer, or an employer or an employee. Either ways, he is still involved in different economic activities, and with that, he must be guided with the proper norms or the proper principles of ethics para na prevailing harmony or para na ay better transactions. Like for example, sa wages, there is a relationship between employer and an employee. Sa production, seller and customer. So, para na successful transaction between the two, they must be guided with the proper norms or principles sa ethics. Like for example, we learned that dapat na ay fiduciary relationship between a seller and a customer. Fiduciary relationship means trust and loyalty with his trust. So trust and loyalty is a good human conduct that must be followed sa atong society para na ay harmony sa mga transactions. So that's it for my report. So as a conclusion, morality is a very important guiding principle in ethics. Also, ethics is related to other sciences because first, sa logic, it is related to logic because if we think right, we will do the right thing. And doing the right thing in accordance with morality is what we call as ethics. Second, psychology. Ethics is related to psychology because both deals with the study of man and his behavior. And the third is sociology. They are related to ethics because we need moral order or the moral principles in order to attain or achieve social order in our community. And lastly, economics, they are related to ethics because as an economic being, we need to be guided with the moral principles or the moral norms to achieve a harmony in our community. So that's it. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am going to talk all about relationship of ethics with the other phases of human life. The study of ethics crosses religious and cultural boundaries. Ethics seems to be everywhere, or in every aspects of our life there is ethics. And ethics plays an important role, especially sa mga organization because it serves as a guide sa paghimo og mga critical decisions so that an organization may work best together. Also, in order to build a community and social relationship in a positive and productive way. How we live ethically becomes important part as we required to make complex decisions concerning customer relations, employer-employee relationship, and other business issue. Actually, there are a lot of other phases of human life, but the book stated only 6 other phases of human life, which are closely related to the ethics. And these are the law, religion, the professional codes of conduct, etiquette, education, and art. The law, religion, and the professional codes of conduct are the topic that I'm going to discuss. And the rest will be discussed by Miss Dedicatoria. So now, let's start with ethics and law. So ethics and law are closely related. Ethics deals with morality. And when we speak morality, we mean primarily the moral law. So kaning moral law mo ni siya ang guidelines nato that determine what is right and wrong. And law may be defined as crystallized ethics because these laws are based and rooted in eternal law. So mo ni siya ang mga rules or norms nga mo govern sa ato mga actions. Kay ang law are made for the common good, for the benefit of the majority and as needed by the society. However, there is difference between what is moral and what is legal. So, laws are intended to regulate external actions of man, while ethics investigates and probes the internal disposition of man, such as his motivations and his thoughts. Although law often embodies ethical principles, law and ethics are far from coextensive. So, dili siya usa or uban. Since many acts that would be widely condemned as unethical, but it is not prohibited by law. Dili siya, wa siya gibawal sa law. Then, ang example ani is, a man can commit 1,000 adulteries in his mind, yet that same man cannot be legally or criminally be guilty because this exercise is innate and private to the person himself. Though dili siya legally liable for entertaining adultery in his mind kay lagi sa iya ratong kaugalingong paghuna-huna, pero he can be morally responsible for entertaining adulterous intents and motives in his thoughts. Kay ang kaning adultery is form of cheating na ni siya. Then ang cheating is morally wrong. Bisan pag in sex and in other matter because it violates the ethical standards of reciprocity and fairness. So therefore, law focus on external regulation of man's action while ethics is concerned with the investigation of the internal disposition of man from moral perspective. And my next topic is ethics and religion. Ethics is a discipline or a set of moral principles and values governing an individual or institutional behaviors, while ang religion generally refers to the service or worship of God or some other object, and it is typically expressed as personal or institutional set of belief, attitude, and practices. Kay kitang mga tao na atay lain-lain pagbuot as individual or as a group kung unsa ato mga pagtuo. Then, ang religion and ethics are the two phases of human activity which are closely related. Both ethics and religion are based on the same postulate. Kay kaning duha, ethics and religion, same rin siya og nagtudlo nato kung unsay sakto or kung unsay dili. Then moreover, ethics and religion have the same end or purpose, and that is attainment of man in this life and beyond. And lastly, ethics and religion prescribe right living as the means of attaining the goal of man in this world. So mo ni siya ang naglead or dictate sa sakto nga agyanan para atong makabot ang atong mga goals sa kalibutan. And there is an important thing to remember between ethics and religion, as what stated in the book. Authentic ethics kuno kind of separated from the existence of God. If there is morality, there must be a moral law. And if there is moral law, there must be a lawgiver. And this ultimate lawgiver can only be God himself. Kay sa tanan natong mga law nga gi-implement diri sa kalibutan is nag-base sa ijang mga sugo or ijang mga balaod. And now, let's proceed to my last topic, which is ethics and the professional codes of conduct. In this globalized world, a lot of things has changed, and full automation has almost taken over all the jobs done by unskilled labor force, which in turn, it creates a demand for a worker with special skills. The need of specialized skills and knowledge in business has created a trend which encourage people or organization to be identified with particular profession, basically because it brings with it prestige, sense of respect, personal esteem, and status symbols. Based on the Webster's dictionary, the meaning of professional is relating to or characteristic of a profession engaged in one of profession participating in an activity not engaged by amateurs. So in other words, it is defined as performing a job to higher standards or someone who does a specific type of work to earn a living. A CPA or a certified public accountant is an example of someone professional. And the term professionalism is the conduct that characterizes a profession or professional person, or it can also be the pursuit of a profession for gain or livelihood. Or in other words, it is the practice or method of a professional as distinguished from amateurs. Ang example ani is as a manager, engineer, or as a lawyer. Mo na siya ang mga example. And the words professions and professional is imply public declaration with the force of a promise. Then professions are the groups which declare in public manner that their member will act in a certain way according to their professions. Kay ang kaning mga professions presents itself to society as social benefits, and society accept the professions expecting it to serve some important social goal. So in short, kung mahimo kang professional, you have the responsibility towards the society, or kinahanglan na kay purpose nga makatabang sa society. Kay in some instances, the society may discipline those who fail to conform to its prescribed way. Kay kadtong mga professional nga wa na mao ang ilang gipang buhat, ang society ang mutabang or modisiplina nila. And then natay mga gitawag nga traditional professionals. And these traditional professionals includes law, medicine, and clergy and education. Na-classify ni sila as traditional professionals kay they are the profession has corporate solidarity, which means mao ni sila ang naay mga specialized and institutionalized training or education and statutory qualification, formal apprenticeship, and codes of conduct, etc. And these are the people who go tough things. Pero katong mga carpenters, mga beauticians, plumber, barbers, and even soldiers, maklassified siya as professionals kay they have the extensive training or knowledge sa ilang mga craft, and they are also paid for the practice of it. Pero dili sila classified as professions. Kay the legal and medical professions fit to the description of the word profession, because the lawyers and doctors, ang skills sa doctors and lawyers cannot be mechanized and require good judgment para ma-apply nila ang sakto nga treatment or advice sa usa ka pasyente or sa usa ka clients. What makes the job of legal and medical professions important is that they are expected to serve for the good of the public or society. And then this is also the main reason nga nung nabilong sila sa group of professionals. Then members of profession set their own rules and then set standards for practice of the profession, and at the same time they discipline their own members. This set of standards of profession is reflected in their own professional codes of conduct. A professional code of ethics is a set of behavioral guidelines that members of a profession are required by their association to observe in the course of their professional practice. And these guidelines, in general terms, prescribe responsibilities that members must adhere to and questionable situations they must not involve. So, kaning professional codes of ethics, mao na siya ang mga rules or guidelines nga kinahanglan sundon sa usa ka members of association. And then in general terms, kaning professional codes of conduct or ethics rather is naghatag og responsibilities sa usa ka members of association to firmly attached to follow the guidelines sa usa ka associations. And in terms nga naay mga problema or questionable situations, kinahanglan dili sila ma-involve. Kay once nga ma-involve ang usa ka members or maka-violate og codes or principles, naa sila'y mahimong sanctions. And these sanctions may include the following: payment of a fine. Kaning payment of a fine, mo ni siya ang murag ang na-violate ra sa usa ka member is light ra siya or gamay ra or dili siya pwede ra siya tagaan og mo hatag ra og fines. Then ang sunod is payment of cost of any investigation, and then reprimand, and then imposition of conditions on membership, and sunod is suspension from membership and expulsion from membership. Kaning suspension from membership and expulsion from membership, mo na siya ang kaning mga dako na ang na-violate sa usa ka members. And that is all my discussion all about. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Gail Dedicatoria and I will now talk about ethics, how it affects etiquette, arts and education. So first, let us define etiquette. The word etiquette came from a French word "etiquette," which means ticket or something to be attached. It is also defined as the rules indicating the proper and polite way to behave. It could also be defined as the conduct or procedure required by good breeding or prescribed by the authority to be observed in. It started back in the medieval times that when people wished to visit the king, they were required to follow the in-house instructions that were posted in the ticket in different areas of the palace. Thus, the word was understood as rules and conduct of behavior that are supposed to be followed in special occasions and circumstances such as visiting the palace. Today, the word etiquette refers to a special code of behavior or courtesy, like saying thank you, you're welcome, good day. It is a code that rules how everyone is expected to behave according to the social conventions and norms of society or in a social class or group. It is usually unwritten, but it may also be put in written form. Ethics and etiquette are closely related to the extent that they both apply to human behavior. Etiquette provides us with guidelines for social behavior. These should help to ensure that our social interactions run smoothly and that we don't make one another uncomfortable in any particular situation. On the other hand, the study of ethics provides us with ways to consider questions of morality, issues of right and wrong, a set of moral guidelines that the society have agreed upon. For example, we might agree that we should not kill or injure other people, and that we should not steal from one another. The rules of etiquette and the rules of morality both change over time and across cultures, although some remain fairly constant, such as the reversible universal morality. Here are some of the examples to the types of etiquette present today. First, we have workplace etiquette. So, muni kung saan mo pagdas imong kaugalingon sa workplace environment. An example ani is arriving on time, minding your manners, respecting your workmates, and maintaining eye contact when talking to your co-workmates para di sila ma-uncomfortable. This is important because it creates a professional, mutually respectful atmosphere and improves communication, which makes the workplace a productive place. Second, we have table manners and meal etiquette, which are the rules used while eating, which may also include the use of utensils in different cultures nga ilan ang i-observe, such as sa US, sa Europe nga before eating ilang i-place sa ilang napkin, while diri sa ato or basic na ni sadya nga meal etiquette nga we should not talk when our mouth is full, or we should ganang chew kanang silently para di ma-uncomfortable ang atong kauban while nagkaunta, or kanang atong phone it should be off the table kay we should focus on the food prepared for us. Third, we have social media etiquette, which refers to the guidelines that companies and individuals use to preserve their reputation online. So example ani is di ka magpatakataka og gamit og hashtag kay you have to do your research before doing such thing nga mo gamit ka og hashtag or kanang di ka mo respond like mura kag robot bitaw ka storya. You have to initiate the communication, you have to respond para smooth bitaw yung transaction, as well as kanang communication etiquette and meetings etiquette. So ang basic ra ani is kanang greetings nimo, then you listen when someone is talking, and raising of one's arm kung nakay pangutan. On, we will now talk about the importance of etiquette. So the foundation of proper etiquette is behavior that is accepted as gracious and polite in social, professional, and family situations. Knowing and exhibiting proper etiquette is essential to any civilization. So in the earlier times, the rules of etiquette were used for two purposes only. First is to remind people of their own status, kaya di ba na sila katong lahi-lahi nga status sa society. And second is to reinforce certain restrictions on individuals within that society. In the present day, etiquette has become the language of manners. Rules of etiquette cover behavior in talking, acting, living, and moving, or in other words, every type of interaction and every situation. Thus, we need to understand the rules of etiquette that apply to our society, just as we need to understand the rules of the road when driving the car. Since if we know what is expected, then we can navigate in any given situation. Without proper manners and etiquette, the customs of polite society would soon disappear, and we would act more like animals and less like people. And abandoning our manners and turning into savages would be an insult to the history of mankind. Next slide, it says that the rules of etiquette are non-moral in character, but the violations of these rules and etiquette can have moral implications. So this phrase means that thorough observation of etiquette does not necessarily make a person moral. Oftentimes, it can even hide or camouflage important moral issues. So one example happened was when the white Americans claimed superiority over the African Americans and other minorities. And during this time, the Americans were taught as part of their etiquette that when a white man enters a bus with no available seat for him, it was expected of the black man to offer his seat to the white man. The black Americans and other minorities were made to believe that it was the proper thing to do and that it was the proper etiquette. Little did they know that the real issue here was racial discrimination. After discussing the importance of etiquette, the risk accompanied with it should also be tackled. What happened with the African Americans proved that the violation to the rules of etiquette definitely has moral implications. That being said, strong ethical sense should be practiced to avoid and prevent any social injustices to the society. On, we will now talk about ethics and education. First, let us define education, which is an instruction or training by which people learn to develop and use their mental, moral, and physical powers and abilities. It is also one way of gaining experience about human life. Since man, kita, being a moral being, it is said that the purpose of education is to perfect the moral character in man. This is proved by some ancient Greek philosophers' views of education, such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, who has contributed to the development of our present educational system. In general, they all believe that the purpose of education is to improve humankind. Therefore, education plays a very important and effective role. In order to become a good human, ethics should be placed as a course in the educational system. So, students who graduated from universities may be well-educated persons in their professions, but it is not enough. Aristotle says that educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. Allow me to explain this through a real-life event that happened in USA when a high school director sent a letter to his teachers every year for opening ceremony. In this letter, he says, I am one of the people who escaped a concentration camp. I have witnessed things that no human being should have ever seen. Gas chambers built by highly trained engineers, children poisoned by well-educated doctors, babies killed by trained nurses, women and children shot and burned by people who were high school graduate and postgraduate. Therefore, I suspect education. He also added that your efforts should not generate educated monsters to become skilled psychopaths. Reading, writing, mathematics is only important when they help your children to become more human. This only proves the importance of ethics in education. Imagine how chaotic our world will be if ethics is not part of education. A great educator also once said that education is coextensive with life. From this, we can say that ethics is life because it is the one that gives life its direction, purpose, and meaning. Lastly, we will now talk about ethics and art. Art is concerned with the use of imagination to make things of aesthetic significance. On the other hand, ethics is aimed at conforming to an accepted standard of good behavior. Ethics also stands for moral goodness, art, and beauty. So it may be difficult to ascertain whether a piece of art which is offensive to morals can be considered beautiful. Both true art and true ethics have the same aim, to arouse and to inspire the noble emotions of man, thereby creating no conflict at all. Consequently, an art which arouses the lower impulses of man defeats the very purpose of art.
In this chapter, we'll discuss about the fundamental principles of ethics. And by ethics, its principal concern is with human conduct, with respect to what is morally right and morally wrong. Di naman ninyo na itong words since we've already taken up this subject sa previous semester. So, nanatay background gamay. In the process of investigating the nature of human conduct, it is important to know the difference between human act and the act of man. The distinction between these two is an important process in the determination of the morality of man's actions. These fundamental concepts are necessary because they serve as our guide in the evaluation and judgment of the morality of human conduct. Human acts are actions that proceed from the deliberate will of man. Basically, actions within sidya that are knowingly performed by the use of reason. Kanang buhat kag butang with careful thought, dili jud kanang instincts or anything, you'll get the point. Makonsider ni sidya as human acts kung mabuhat mo siya using knowledge, consent, and it is willfully carried out by the person. It is characterized as first, the free and voluntary acts of man, acts done with knowledge and consent, acts which are proper to man as a rational being, since man has been gifted with rationality and freedom of will. Lastly is acts which are conscious and under our control, and for which we are responsible. Acts, in order to be truly human, must be done deliberately, intentionally, and willfully carried out by the doer, because without those three, then there can be no human act. Acts of man, on the other hand, monisijay instinctive or immediate action to the point nga, medyo di mo siya hunahunaon. These are actions that are naturally exhibited by man. Money morally indifferent siya or neutral because we can't judge them to be either ethical or unethical. Ang bottom line ani is, ang acts of man are natural acts that are performed by virtue of our nature as animal beings. There are two categories. First is unnatural involuntary actions. These are actions performed intuitively or involuntarily. Basically, ang ato yung keyword ani is involuntary. Mga butang nga dili na hunahunaon, automatic na, such as blinking of the eyes, metabolism, perspiration, sneezing, beating of the heart, and others. Ang ikaduha is ang natural voluntary actions. Moni siya ang mga actions na within the control of man pero for a short period of time ra, such as breathing, sleeping, eating, walking, salivation, swallowing, and others. You can choose not to do those things pero for a short period of time na jud. For example, sleeping. Makontrol mo nga di sa ka matulog. Pero eventually, dukaon mo jud ka. Mauna ang natural voluntary actions. Makontrol mo pero short period of time ra. It is important to note that there are special circumstances where some acts of man, particularly the natural voluntary actions, may become human acts, and therefore may be judged to be either moral or immoral. Take reading, for example. It is a neutral activity. However, if one reads a smut magazine or anything that contains sexual contents, then reading in this case becomes an immoral action. Another example is sleeping, which is also considered as a neutral activity. But when a police officer, for instance, sleeps while he is assigned on a post or on his duty, then the action becomes unethical. Human acts in relation to reason. Good acts are those done by man in harmony with the dictates of right reason, while evil acts are those actions done by man in contradiction with the dictates of right reason, while indifferent acts are those acts that are neither good nor evil.
Good day, I am Kenneth Honrada and I am here to talk about the voluntariness of the human act. The concept of voluntariness is important in ethics because only voluntary acts have moral bearing. This means that because human acts are performed by man with his knowledge and consent, he is therefore responsible for his action. However, the degree of culpability will, by and large, depends on the degree of responsibility. So the following are the categories of voluntary actions. Perfect voluntariness. These are the actions that are performed with full knowledge and with full consent. So this means that perfect voluntariness is present in a person who fully knows and fully intends an act. Imperfect voluntariness. These are the actions that occur when there is no perfect knowledge or consent, or either both knowledge or consent is partial. This means that it is a person who acts without fully realizing what he means to do. Direct voluntariness. These are the actions that are intended for its own sake, either as a mean or as an end. like for example, murder or stealing. And lastly is the indirect voluntariness. These are the actions that are not intended for its own sake, but which merely follows as a regrettable consequences of an action. Like for example, bombing an enemy's hideout which leads to the killing of non-combatants within the area. So from this point on, we can say that from the topic, the voluntariness of the human act, we can say that we are all responsible for the consequences of our actions even if these are not intended, since we place the cost and we will the whole act. Or in other terms, the cost of the cost is also the cost of the thing cost. And now we are down to the moral principle involved in actions having two effects, the indirect voluntary act. A difficult question sometimes arises as to whether it would be morally right to do certain actions from which good as well as bad effects follow. Meaning, is it morally right to do acts which entails good as well as bad consequences? The answer for that would be yes, with the following conditions from Panizo 1964. First, the action must be morally good in itself, or at least morally indifferent. Second, the good effect of the act must precede the evil effect. The evil effect is morally allowed to happen as a regrettable consequence. Third, there must be a grave or sufficient reason in doing the act. Lastly, the fourth, the evil effect should not outweigh the good effect, or at least the good effect should be equivalent to the importance of the evil effect. And that's that. I hope you understand and thank you.
Hi, I'm MABASA. Sometimes I find it difficult to determine if my action is good or bad. I do have my confusions when it comes to the goodness or evilness of an act. That's why we have to study the determinants of morality. Human acts like studying, working, stealing, and shopping, which proceed from the deliberate free will of man, are linked to what we call norms, the standards of proper behavior. Only the human beings were given the freedom and will to choose between things. The determinants of morality are factors that serve as the measure of the goodness and the evilness of the human act. So there are three determinants of morality. The first determinant is the end of the action. This is considered as the primary determinant of morality. It refers to the natural purpose of the act, or it refers to the natural results of the action. To further understand the concept of the end of the action, let's take for example studying. The natural purpose or end result for studying is learning, and as you have observed, it is the same with all people in a way that if everyone will study, then they will learn something. Same with eating. The natural purpose of why we eat is for us to get our tummy full. This purpose or result is the same or applicable to all people. Now let's proceed to the second determinant of morality, which is the end of the actor. This refers to the intention or the motive of the doer of the act. This is to be distinguished from the end of the action. When we say the end of the actor, the motives of the agent varies with different individuals. So there are different intentions with different people. While for the end of the action, the motives of the agents are the same with all individuals. Example for the end of the actor. We have here biking. For this girl, her purpose is exercise. And for this guy, his purpose is to finish an errand. And for this third guy, his purpose is for fun. See? There is different motives between people. Now let's move to the end of the action. Our example here is studying. The end result for studying is learning. It is always the same with people, that learning is the goal why we study. The last determinant of morality is circumstances of the act. It refers to the conditions that affect the human act by increasing or decreasing the responsibility of the actor. These circumstances of the act are not considered part of the action, which means acts per se can exist without the circumstances. For example, eating meat on Good Friday. The condition here is Good Friday, and the human act is eating meat. The condition, which is the Good Friday, is not part of action because eating meat can still exist even without the former. However, circumstances affect the morality of the act. The following are considered the circumstances of the act because they can either aggravate or mitigate the culpability of the actor. First to consider is who. It refers to the person to whom the act is ascribed. What. It refers to the quality or the quantity of the object of the act. Where. Refers to the place where the act is performed. How. Refers to the manner or mode of act performed. By what means. Refers to the means employed by the actor. When. Refers to the circumstance of time. Last is why. Refers to the intention of the act. Now, Paul Glenn 1968 write 5 principles involving the implications of the circumstances of the act. First principle, an indifferent act can become good or evil through circumstances. Eating meat is neither good nor bad. However, eating meat on Good Friday intentionally is evil. Second, a good act can become evil through circumstances, like giving money to poor people is a good action. However, giving money to the same poor people to buy votes during election is evil. Third, an intrinsically good act can become better, or intrinsically evil act can become worse through circumstances. Like visiting a sick person to comfort him is a good action. However, not visiting a sick person in the hospital out of hatred is worse. Fourth, an evil act can never become good through circumstances. Example, stealing money to buy food cannot make the action of stealing good. Fifth, a good act done with evil means destroys the entire objective goodness of the act. Like giving food to the hungry is a good action. However, giving money to the hungry through robbery is evil. Thank you so much. I hope you learned something from my report.